So there was an outside report that Na'eem Offord was going to play safety or nickel for the Ducks. And then Oregon defense coordinator Tosh Lupoi was asked about it and said, no, we recruited him to play corner. We see him as a corner or a nickel. Well, here's just adding to the list of things I'm interested to see in spring football, because Offord, like DeCorian Moore, is the highest rated recruit ever at his position to the University of Oregon. Now, that's just something that is on paper. That doesn't automatically mean he's ready to go right away. That's what the scouting community will tell you. That's what you're going to see if you talk to anyone who has ever watched the kid play live, because he's an incredibly talented player. But does it guarantee anything? No, because if he's not making the shift to safety, two takeaways there. The first one is Offord's path to playing time, I think, is slightly more narrow. Right now, I'd say Oregon's starting cornerbacks are most likely Jalil Florence and Theron Johnson. Florence, who missed this past season with an injury. You never know how guys come back from that. And Theron Johnson, the transfer from Northwestern, who I think is this year's Brandon Johnson, comes in and is a starting caliber player. And, Johnson started the season hot, cooled off a bit as it went on, but overall was a good player in Oregon secondary this past year. Did a lot of really good things. And they're both around 5'11" and have got experience. And they weren't first or second team all conference guys, but they were honorable mention guys at non-traditional football powers that are academic powers in the country. Johnson from Northwestern, Theron Johnson from Northwestern, Brandon Johnson from Duke, and they have the same last name. So a lot of similarities there. Maybe I'm overselling that. But Johnson, I think, is one of Oregon's starting corners in all likelihood. So is Offord going to beat out Jalil Florence? Maybe, coming off an injury. He's not the only guy in that room, by the way. Or does he go and start at nickel? Maybe. That'd be a departure, because Offord is 6'1". Johnson is in the 5'10", 5'11" range. To have someone be a little bit taller that plays that nickel spot, that'd be a slight change in physical profile that I know a lot of Oregon fans want to see going into next year. Even though Ohio State isn't on the roster, it's still something that a lot of fans feel held Oregon back. And in some respect, sure. I think overall you just needed better players. Dylan Thienemann's not that much taller than or that much bigger than Kobe Savage and Tysheem Johnson, but he's got more athletic bursts, and he's just a better, more instinctual football player than either of those guys. So Offord's path to playing, if he's not moving back to the safety position, is slightly more narrow. I mean, Tosh Lupoi did mention his positional versatility, so it's not like he could never make that particular switch. This reminds me a lot of Triquez Bridges, where he was recruited as a safety, and we never got to see him play that spot, and he went to corner, and he was a fine player for a couple of years, but it always kind of left those of us on the outside looking in, wondering what he would have been like at safety on the back end. I mean, there was a moment in time where you could have had Brian Addison and Triquez Bridges as your two starting safeties at 6'5" and 6'3". Not a lot of athletes that look that way. So I think the options at the second starting safety spot across from Thienemann are pretty wide. Like there's a wide array of guys that can go out and claim that job. That could be Aaron Flowers. That could be Kingston Lopa. That could be Peyton Woodyard. That could be Trey McNutt, another incoming 5-star true freshman who is one of the 20 or 25 highest rated recruits in Oregon history. I'm pretty sure he and Offord are both top 20, and DeCorian Moore is top 2, which is pretty darn good. So I look at what Offord brings to the table, and it'll just come down at the end of the day to how he performs in spring football and how quickly he adapts to everything. Do you understand your coverage assignments at all times so that you don't have a coverage bust on the back end? Because if you've got communication problems on the defensive line, that might lead to a hole being opened up and a run play, breaking for an extra 10 to 15 yards perhaps, or a quarterback having time to throw when he should, or what have you, right? Not saying you are okay with those sorts of mistakes, but a mistake on the back end, we saw that in the Rose Bowl. Miscue, Jeremiah Smith is running wide open, easy pitch and catch, 50-yard touchdown. Like, those are the sorts of things that I think will determine whether Offord carves himself out to be a starter or just a role player coming into 2025. But, Tosh was very clear that, we recruited him to play corner. Well, does he go and start at corner as a true freshman? Maybe he does. Maybe he goes and starts at outside corner. Maybe it's him and Jalil Florence, or Jalil slides inside to nickel. I don't know. I think there are a lot of options, and the secondary is one of the position groups I'm most interested to see going into this year. Nathan sent this question in a while ago about the 12-team playoff and any kind of format change that could or should arrive. He says, what about a 12-team playoff with double elimination bracket for the top 8 seed? Nope, not going to happen. So just rule that part out of it. Combined with closer spacing of rounds, entire playoff could be done in the same time frame. Rivalry week, November 25th, conference champions, first weekend in December, Army-Navy game. Everyone gets a week off except Army-Navy, December 9th, round 1, and then it just keeps going down the list, and everything wraps up by January 18th. So obviously with, the way the playoff worked out for Oregon, it was not an ideal situation. I said going into the Big Ten title game, yes, Oregon should want to win the game. And coming out of the season now, I have very much changed my mind. Should have lost the game. Would have wound up in the semifinals. Maybe they lose to Ohio State eventually, but I feel pretty good about Oregon winning games at home since the national champions came to Autzen and were not able to win. And then who would they have played the next week? I think it would have been Georgia, perhaps, with a backup quarterback, and Georgia still a capable team with a really good roster, but I watched them play against Notre Dame, and I watched Notre Dame play against Penn State. There's a lot of transitive hypotheticals in there. But the problem with the playoff this past year is that it's not going to get fixed going into next season. Now, for 2026, we could see a format shift so that you don't have a situation like what happened to Oregon where they're playing the eventual national champion for their first game. And the biggest thing that I would like to see shifted, and again, Nathan, double elimination, no, that doesn't work logistically. That's not the way that it should go. And that reduces the importance of playoff games. No, that's not what I would like to see happen. I would either like to see not giving automatic buys to the conference champions, or more realistically, just reseed after the first round. And the highest seed gets to play the lowest remaining seed. The next highest seed plays the next lowest remaining seed, et cetera, et cetera. That's the way I think within the current framework where you still emphasize conference championship games, which is what the leagues really, really want because it makes them more valuable and more money and all that stuff. That's fine. I understand where their heads are at there. I like conference championship weekend a lot. So maximizing its importance, sure, go for it. But what you should have instead of buys being given to those teams who then go play a neutral site, buys given to those teams who then play at home. That's what I would like to see, because that then keeps maximum importance on the regular season, because there should be nothing as valuable in a playoff structure as a home playoff game. And I don't think those changes, according to Heather Dinich of ESPN, last I'd heard on it, are not expected to arrive next year, which could work out for the Ducks. Because if you're an everyday out there, I don't think Oregon will be at the same level next season. Their schedule is incredibly favorable. I expect them to make the playoff. But this is something I'll talk about probably later this week. Big Ten championship game, I don't know. That's a challenging proposition, but the schedule works out in an incredibly favorable way. But if they don't get there, let's say they go 11-1, lose to Penn State, and Penn State goes 11-1, loses to Ohio State, but Michigan's got a bunch of losses. It works out to be Ohio State, Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. Oregon probably gets a home playoff game at that point. So is that the worst thing in the world? Not necessarily. And maybe they'd benefit from a format that I agree is screwed up and wrong. But if it's going to be there, well, you play the hand you're dealt, and you can't go back and redeal because you're the card player and not the dealer in this hypothetical. So, no, I just like to see the teams that earn a bye in the regular season with a conference championship or being one of the highest ranked teams in the college football playoff get a home playoff game, because that's the real ultimate prize.